Begin today the Gemara on Daf Samach, right at the beginning of the Yamud, the Mishnah. Zog the Heilige Mishnah, Baal Oiv. The Baal Oiv, which is a kind of kishuf that the Torah speaks about, that you chayav skila for. Ze pisaim hamedabe meshechyai. This is pisaim, which means that a person brings up a mace, a dead body, and it's under his, it's under the armpit, and from there the mace speaks. That's the koyach of this kishuf. The Gemara will describe more about this, as we'll see. The Yud'aini, what's Yud'aini? Also something, a kishiv, ze medabe b'fiv. You take a bone of a certain animal, or some say a bird, that its name is Yadua, you place it in the mouth, and it starts to talk. So if one does this, harei l'beskila. These are other cases that there's a kishiv that's chayav skila. Now, v'hanishal behem, one that asks advice through someone that's doing this kishiv of Oivin Yud'aini, and the Mishnah uses the term nishal. The Maram here says that to say that the way they did this was the one that had this kishiv of Oivin Yud'aini would ask the person, what is it that you want to know? And you would answer, it's this and this and that. So nishal, you're being asked, and you're using the services of this Baal Oivin Yud'aini, Bazhara. So this is a lav. It's not chayiv skila, but it's a lav. And Rashi brings the lav is al tifnu ala oivis, which is only a lav. Taisus has a different shot on this, but according to Rashi, the lav is al tifnu ala oivis. Okay, so the Gemara begins here with the machlekes Rabbi Yochanan and Shlakish, and the discussion will be contrasting this Mishnah to a Mishnah in beginning of Masechta Krisis. The Mishnah in beginning of Masechta Krisis counts all the cases where you chayav kodesh. It's 36 actually, 36 cases that you chayav kodesh, and over there it only mentions Oiv and it doesn't mention Yud'aini. So the Gemara, Maishna Diktani Baloiv Yud'aini here mentions both Oiv and Yud'aini, Umaishna Gabi Krisis, and why in the beginning of Masechta Krisis Diktani Baal Oiv, it only mentions the Baal Oiv, V'shayrei Yud'aini, doesn't mention Yud'aini. So there's two answers. Rabbi Yochanan Amar, Rabbi Yochanan's answer is Hoyel L'Shneim Balav Echad Nemru. Since Oiv and Yud'aini are said together in the same lav, so therefore they're not counted separately. So what does this mean? So Rashi explains that by Oiv and Yud'aini, if you do either just Oiv or one does just the kishuf of Yud'aini, you'll be chayiv for each one separately. Meaning you'll be chayiv even if you did only one. That is, again, only if you did only one, you'll be chayiv. However, if you do both together, then you're only going to be chayiv one karban chatas. You're not going to be chayiv two karbanis chatas, because it says ashaloi se aseno. By a karban chatas is based on the lav. How many karbanis chatas you bring is based on the lav. This is according to Rabbi Yochanan. And therefore, since by Oivin Yud'aini, it only says one lav, al tifnu ela oivis v'la Yud'ainim, it says together one lav. So if it's one lav, true, you would be chayiv for Oiv separately if you just do Oiv. Or if you do just Yud'aini, you'll be chayiv. But if you do both together b'sheigig, then you'll only be chayiv one karban chatas. And in the Mishnah Masechta Krisis, it's counting 36 different krisis that if you do it b'sheigig, you'll be chayiv 36 chatois. So I can't count Oivin Yud'aini separately because you're not going to be chayiv for 37th. So therefore it doesn't mention it. Rashi brings other examples where you see this thing that it doesn't matter the chi of misa or the chi of kodesh, it matters the lav. The lav is what tells you if it's one lav, it's one karban chatas, if it's two lav, and it's two karbanis chatas. That's Rabbi Yochanan's shitta. Shlakish has a different reason. Reason it doesn't mention Yud'aini is Yud'aini lefisha ein by maisa. Yud'aini is something that there's no maisa in the way it's done. Even though you do have to place this bone of this animal Yadua in your mouth, so you are doing a certain maisa, but then when the kishuf actually happens, when it talks on its own. Then there's no maisa. There's a maisa person does before, but b'shas maisa, there's no maisa. And therefore, by chatas, the rule is you don't bring a karban chatas. The Pelashon by karban chatas, it says va'asa achas. It has to be an asiyah. There's an action. Then there's a karban chatas. Since here there's no action, so for Yud'aini, it's a lav, but there's no karban chatas.
Same thing.
Huh?
Also
no, so the Gemara is going to explain soon that by Oiv there is a maisa. You place the mace, it's under the armpit, but then the person has to bang with his arms in order for the mace to speak. We'll see soon. The Gemara will say there's a maisa. Now, Rabbi Yochanan, Ma'ishna Bal Oiv de Nokat. So according to Rabbi Yochanan's opinion, that really Oiv and Yud'aini, the point is you're not going to be chayiv two karbanis chatas for it. Okay, so it could mention Oiv or it could mention Yud'aini. Why is it mentioning Dafka Oiv and not Yud'aini? Answers the Gemara, Mishum the Pasach Beikra. Reason is because in the Pasach it says Oiv first, so the Mishnah mentions Oiv. Averish Lakish, my time Eloyama Rabbi Yochanan. Why didn't the Shlakish say Rabbi Yochanan's answer that it can't count Oiv and Yud'aini because there are no 37 chatois? Since if you do both of them, you'll only be chayiv once, That's why it can't mention both of them. And says the Gemara, Rav Papa explained, Rish Lakish actually disagrees with the whole premise that Rabbi Yochanan said. He says, Chalukin ein b'misa. Since we see in the pasuk when it mentions the einish of misa by Oiv and Yedaini, there the pasuk does say separately. The lashon of the pasuk Rashi brings, it says Ki ben Oiv Oy Yedaini Ma'isyu Maso. There it says Oiv Oy Yedaini, not like by the Malchus it says Al Tifnu Ela Oiv is Ve Ela Yedaini. Here it says Oy Yedaini and then Ma'isyu Maso. So it says separately misa for Oiv and separately misa for Yedaini. So therefore, you would be chayiv, theoretically, you would be chayiv a separate carbon chatas for the Oiv and separately for the Yedaini. So he doesn't hold of Rabbi Yechanan's rule that you go by the lav, you go by the misa. And therefore, the only way to explain why the Mishnah doesn't count Yedaini is because there's no maisa and you're not chayiv a chatas for it. Rabbi Yechanan, however, holds chalukah the lav shma chalukah, that you follow the distinction that it says in the pasuk regarding the lav. That's what makes the distinction regarding the chatas. Chalukah de misa lo yishma chalukah. But the fact that there's a difference, it says oy by the misa, that's not what you look at regarding the carbon chatas. That's the machlokes here. Now the Gemara asks on the other hand, Rabbi Yochanan, my time Rish Lakish. Why didn't Rabbi Yochanan say like Rish Lakish that it doesn't mention Yedaini? Because by Yedaini there's no maisa, and if there's no maisa, there's no chatas. So the answer is, Amalach, Rabbi Yochanan will tell you, Masnisan the Krisis, this first Mishnah in Krisis, Rabbi Kivi. It's following Rabbi Kiva's opinion. The Amar loy bein a maisa, that says to be chayav a chatas, you don't need a maisa. So therefore, you can't give this answer that Yedaini has no maisa, because according to Rabbi Kiva, you would still be chayav a chatas. However, Rish Lakish will tell you, Rish Lakish, nihi deloy boy Rabbi Kiva maisa. True, Rabbi Kiva doesn't require a maisa rabba, a bigger action, but maisa zutta boy. But a maisa zutta, he still does require. There are different levels of actions. There's an action that a person does something with an actual object. He has an impact. He makes a shini. He does something with a chayfetz. Or there's an action. There's just a movement of the body or a movement of the lips. It's a smaller action. The Gemara is going to describe this now. So Rish Lakish holds that a small action there does have to be. So the Gemara explains megadef my ma'aseh. One of the things that are listed in the Mishnah in Krisis is the megadef, the opposite of blessing Hashem's name. So if you're saying that according to Rabbi Kiva there has to be a maisa, what kind of a maisa is there by Megadav? It's just speaking, it's just words. And says the Gemara, Akim esvasav of a maisa, the movement of the lips, that's the maisa. Now, Bal Oiv, my maisa ike, if Rish Lakish is saying that we're not mentioning Yedaini because Yedaini, once the person places it in his mouth, it just speaks on its own. So B'shas maisa, there's no action that he's doing. So l'chayre by Oiv as well, he's maila the mace under his armpit, and then it speaks on its own. So what maisa is there? The answer is no. There is a maisa. Ikka hakoshes reisav. When one, the way this kishuf is, when he has it speak, it has to be by him banging his arms. So there is a maisa with his arms that he's doing. But have a maisa, that's the maisa. Now this is all, however, considered to be a maisa zutta, because he's just doing a movement with his body. He's not doing a maisa b'shas maisa. When the kishuf is happening, he's not doing a maisa with a chayfetz. So therefore, this is only according to Rabbi Kiva. Oh, but the Gemara now actually understands this. The Gemara understands that what Rish Lakish here is saying about the oiv, that the person has to bang his arms, and therefore it's a maisa, that this would be even according to the Rabbanan. So the Gemara asks, Vafilu Rabbanan, did Rish Lakish mean to say regarding the maisa by oiv, that this would be even according to the Rabbanan, a maisa? And the reason the Gemara is saying this is because if you look over there by the Mishnah of Krisos, the Rabbanan that disagree with Rabbi Kiva, they only disagree regarding Megadev. By Megadev, the Rabbanan say you're not going to be chayav achatas. By Oiv, they don't disagree. So it seems like the difference is because Megadev, which is just a movement of the lips, there Chachamim say that's not enough of a maisa. Mashayin came to get to Oiv, where the person is banging his arms, that's more of a maisa, and even the Rabbanan would agree that this is considered to be a maisa. But the Gemara asks, could this be true? But Vatanya and a Braisa we learned, Ein chayav ela al dava sheyesh by maisa. You only chayav a chatos by serving avodah zarah if there's an action, and that is kagoin zibuach kitter nisuch v'shtachva. Whether you shecht or you burn or you pour, and the last one that it mentions, and this is what's relevant for us, hishtachava, when one bows to avodah zarah, which is also only a movement of the body, not like the other actions where you're touching, you're taking something physical, an object, and you're doing something with it. And Rish Lakish said about this, man, Tana hishtachava, who's the Tana that says that for bowing, you're going to have to bring a carbon chatos? Rabbi Kiva. It's Rabbi Kiva, the Amalei being a maisa, because Rabbi Kiva says you don't need a significant maisa, you don't need a maisa rabba, and therefore just the movement of the body in hishtachava is going to be considered a maisa. But Rabbi Yochanan said, Afilu Teimer Rabbanon, that this brayse that says Ishtachva, you'll be chayav achatos, it could even be according to the Rabbanon, because kfifas kaimasai leRabbanon hava maisa. The Rabbanon would say that when one bows and he bends his head, that is a significant action. So now the Gemara asks, according to Reish Lakish, that's what the discussion over here is. Reish Lakish, kfifas kaimasai leRabbanon lo hava maisa. The way Reish Lakish explains this brayse is that just bowing is not considered to be a maisa, since it's just a movement of the body. So hakoshes reyesa of the Baal Oiv have a maisa. So if one is banging his arms by the kishuf of Oiv, that is a maisa. It seems like bowing your head by shtachava, which could even be included when one prostrates himself completely, pishut yadayim v'raglayim, he bows down completely on the ground for avodah zarah. That's not called a maisa, according to the Rabbanan. So definitely just banging your arms should not be considered to be a maisa, according to the Rabbanan. So why does Reish Lakish, before saying, the Gemara understood Reish Lakish meant to say that even according to the Rabbanon, Oiv will be a maisa? And says the Gemara, that's not what he meant to say. Ki ka'amar Reish Lakish nami l'Rabbi Akiva. He's just saying only according to Rabbi Akiva, Oiv, when you bang the arms, it's a maisa. Aval Rabbanon loy, but according to the Rabbanon, that's not considered to be a maisa. But the Gemara asks, if that's the case, ihachi, if so, when the Rabbanon argue with Rabbi Akiva in that Mishnah in Krisis, Yatza Megadef or Baloiv Mibayle. What does it say there? That Rabbi Akiva, the Rabbanan that is, disagreed with Rabbi Akiva only regarding the Megadef. The only one they said you have to take out from being Chayav Achatas is the Megadef, and that they said is not a Maisa. But now you're telling me that even the Baloiv, where he just bangs his arms, is also not a Maisa. So why didn't he take out the Oiv either? Should have said Yatza Megadef or Baloiv Mibayle. So the Gemara explains, and the Gemara is going to give a few answers, but the point the Gemara is going to say now is that the Oiv that it speaks about in our Mishnah and the Baal Oiv that it speaks about in Masechta Krisis is a different Baal Oiv. It's not the same thing. Different. It has the same name of Kishuv Oiv, but it's not exactly the same thing. So Ela Ma'ula, so therefore Ola says, what's the Baal Oiv that it speaks about there? B'mekater l'shed, when one burns avodah zarah for the Shin Dalet. So that's something which is Mamash HaMaisa, and that's where the Chachamim didn't argue in that. Our Mishnah is speaking about the Baal Oiv of having the mace speak under the armpit where you bang your arms. It's a different Oiv. So that's why over there Chachamim don't argue. But Rav asked him this, that can't be Baal Oiv, because Mekater l'shed, one that burns for a shed, Oiv Avedis Kechavim, that's in the category of Avodah Zarah, has nothing to do with Oiv. Elo Amar Rava, so Rava says, what's the Baal Oiv that the Mishnah is speaking about there? B'mekater l'chaber, when one is burning, and this is a kind of kishiv that he does to be mechaber, that brings together the shedim, brings together the koiches of tumah. That's what this oiv accomplishes. So it's a form of oiv, but a different kind of oiv. Also, it's not serving away the zara. It's for the point of being mechaber, bringing together the shedim. Amalei Abaye, but Abaye asks on this pshat, hamekater lechaber choiver. Again, hamekater lechaber, one that burns and he does this kishiv in order to bring together the shedim. That's a different lav. Choiver chaveru. That's another lav in the Torah where it says choiver chaver, which means you're not allowed to do a kishiv that gathers together. So that's a lav, actually, a different lav. It's not oiv, and you're not chayv misa for this. You're not chayv skila for this. So Rav answers yes, you're right. There is another lav of chayv chaver where you're not chayv skila, but vatayra amra chayver zeh b'skila. This chayver that we're talking about here will be skila. The chayver that's a lav that's not skila, the Gemara is soon going to describe here, right here, that it refers to someone that uses the koyach of kishiv to bring together animals, bring together different creatures. For that, there's no skila. But here, this chayv chaver that brings together the shadim, that's actually a form of oiv that you will be chayiv skila for. And that's what the Mishnah in Krisis was talking about. Tan Rabbanon, so the Gemara brings it from a brayse. What is this chayv chaver? Chayv chaver means echad chaber gadol vechad chaber cotton. When one uses the power of kishiv to bring together large animals or small creatures, he brings together snakes and scorpions. So Amar Abaye says, Hilkach man that summit zibura v'akrabe, someone that brings together bees or scorpions, even if he's doing it because he doesn't want them to harm him, also, you're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to use this power of kishiv to take away the harm of bees or scorpions that are harming you, unless it's b'koach nefashis. As the Mefarshim say. Okay, so that's what this chayver chaver is. Now the Gemara goes back to the discussion over here, the machlokes of Rabbi Yochanan and Reish Lakish. So what was mentioned before was that Rabbi Yochanan said that according to the Rabbanon, hishtachava, when one does the emotion with his body, which is hishtachava, according to the Rabbanan, that's a significant action. It's a Maisa, and you'll be chayiv for this. So the Gemara has a question on this. The Gemara Rabbi Yechanan, Ma'ishna the kvifas kaimasel Rabbanan ave Maisa. If one bows his head and he bows for avodah zarah, that is a Maisa. You're chayiv for this. However, the movement of the lips, lo have a Maisa. That's not considered to be an action according to Rabbi Yechanan. There, the Rabbanan do argue. What's the difference? What's the difference if they're both a movement of the body and you're not doing an action with an object? What difference is it if you tilt the head or if you move your lips? Why this is a Maisa and this is not? So Rav answers, Shani Megadif. The reason why by Megadif, the Chachamim say it's not a Maisa, Hayol v'yeshnei belev. Because by the Megadif, the movement of the lips is not actually the main Isser. When one blesses Hashem's name, what's the actual Isser? It's not the words that he says, it's the Kavanah that he has. Now she says, what happens if a person wants to, the opposite of bless his friend? And instead of saying his friend's name, he nicknames his friend's name with Hashem's name. And he's cursing his friend. But he's just using a nickname with Hashem's name. He's not going to be over in the Isser of Megadif. Megadif is the fact that Belev, the person has the kavanah to bless Hashem's name. So therefore, the main thing is Belev. And therefore, Belev, that's not a Maisa. That's why over there, you're going to be, there's no chiyuv for this. Most of Rav Zayda, so based on this, Rav Zayda asks, and there's a Braisa regarding Eidim Zaymimin. Eidim Zaymimin is also another case where there's no Maisa. So now this is in a brayser where it discusses, the Rashi brings the whole brayser from Teres Kainim regarding different cases, what is considered to be a significant thing that there's a maisa that you'll be chayiv a chatas for. So it says there, Yotzu Eidim Zaymimin Shem Ben Maisa. Eidim Zaymin, they said false testimony, there's no maisa for this. According to the Rabbanan, there's no maisa. The question is, according to the explanation we just said, why not? By Eidim Zaymin, the Isser is not about what's in their heart. The Isser is about the words that they say. So if the Rabbanan hold regarding Hishtachava, which is a movement of the body, that over there it's a Maisa, and the only reason by Megadav is because it's Belev. That's why it's not a Maisa. So by Eidim Zaymin it should be considered to be a Maisa. It's a movement of the lips. Omar Rave, so Rav answers, Shani Eidim Zaymin. By Eidim Zaymin it's different. Hoyel v'yeshnoi b'koil. Because by Eidim Zaymin, what's the Isser? It's not the movement of your lips. If you move your lips when you say testimony, but there's no voice, and the Bezin can't hear what you're saying, you haven't said any false testimony that the Bezin hears. The whole Isra is with the voice that the Bezin hears, and the voice that that comes out of your mouth when you say Eidos, that voice is doesn't have a mamish, that's not a Maisa, and therefore if that's the main Isra, it's ain't by Maisa, you're not chayav v'chatas. But the Gemara asks in this answer, "V'koil Rabbi Yechanan lav Maisu." When there's just a voice, are you going to tell me that according to Rabbi Yechanan this is not significant? It's not a Maisa. But va'itmer, we learned the machlekes about this, and Rabbi Yechanan was actually the one that says that it is a Maisa. Chasma b'koil v'nhiga b'koil. In a case where you're not allowed to muzzle the animals when it's threshing, or you're not allowed to be manig, you're not allowed to have klayim, two different animals that are manig, a wagon, or when it comes to plowing. How did you cause the chesima or the klayim? With your voice. With your voice, you're screaming at the animal and the animal stops from eating. You're muzzling it that way. Or you're manig, two animals go together all by you shouting at them. So it's just your voice. Rabbi Yechanan says that doing this, the akimas v'sayim, your voice that comes out of the movement of your lips, you're going to be chayiv for this. But Reish Lakish Amar Poter, and Reish Lakish says you're Poter. So Rabbi Yechanan Amar Chayiv Akimas Peva v'Maisa. The movement of the lips and the voice that comes out, so it's a Maisa, and you're Chayiv for this. Reish Lakish Amar Poter Akimas Piv Lo Yav Maisa. That the movement of your lips is not a Maisa. So here you see that Dafka Rabbi Yechanan is the one that says that the voice that comes out when you move your lips, it's going to be considered a Maisa. And there's also another point there. It's not only about the fact that there's the voice that comes out of your mouth, but through the voice you're causing a reaction. You're causing a maisa to happen, that the animal is muzzled, or that the animals go together, the klayim, and the same thing by Eidim Zaymin. The words that you're saying causes Bezdin to listen and take action, to give a chiyuv misa, whatever it may be. So this voice is not stam a voice. You can't say, oh, it's just words. I just said word. What do you mean? It's not just words. You're saying words in a Bezdin, and because of this, Bezdin is taking action on what you said. And so according to Rabbi Yechanan, such a kind of voice is considered to be a maisa.
So Bezdin, that's for, the famous
yeah.
By Kriyishma, the movement of the lips is Maisa.
Yeah. That's benegay to whether you have to hear or not, or just the movement. Yeah. Okay, it's a little bit of a different Indian. Okay, so therefore the Gemara gives a different answer. Elo Marove, so Rove says, why Eidim Zaymin is not a Maisa? Shani Eidim Zaymin Hoyel v'Yeshnam b'Re'iyah. Since by Eidim Zaymin, what's the Eidus over here that they're testifying? They're testifying that we saw this and this. The seeing, or what they're saying, that they witnessed, what they saw, that's not a Maisa. That's why Edom Zayman is not considered to be a Maisa, because their main chiyuv is the Re'iyah. Okay, so this answer the Gemara gives here, Yeshna B'Riyah, is a bit difficult to understand. Because by Edom Zayman, what's the story? They're saying false testimony. They never really saw anything. So their Issa is not what they saw. They're saying they saw. Okay, so you learn the gears of the Gemara we have here. You're going to have to say the Gemara means to say, because what they're saying is that they witnessed and they saw, and so the Isser is based on what they say they saw, so therefore we consider it not to be a Maisa. But the Rif here is guided in the Gemara another Lashon, not Yeshnam B'Re'iyah, but Yeshnam B'Ayah. Ayah means that the Edom Zayman, when they say false testimony, you could be chayev by Edom Zayman even if you don't actually say anything. The Bezdin says the story and they ask you, is this what you saw? And the person just says, something like that. That's or the Lashon of the Gemara, Ayah. That without, there's even no movement of your lips. You just, So in such a case, you'll be chayev. That's why it's not considered a Maisa at all. Taner Rabbanan, going back to Oiv and Yedoni. Baal Oiv, Zeh Medaber, Ben Aprokim, one that brings up the mace, and he brings up the mace. So before we had the mace under the armpit, but here it says Ben Aprokim. It's brought on the joints of the person's fingers. Umi Ben Atzila Yadav, between the fingers of the person. There could be on the other joints of the other places in the body. Yudayni zamaniach etzem yadua befiv, one that places this bone from this animal yadua in his mouth, v'umedaba meilov, and it speaks on its own. Okay, so the Gemara brings from Psukim, other places where it seems like that by oiv you don't have to place the mace, whether it means the mace mamish or it means the spirit of the mace, the neshama of the mace. It's not on the joints of the body, because macevei, the pasuk says, v'hoya ka'oiv me'eretz kailech. Your voice will be as low as the voice of the oiv that comes from the ground. So my love, don't you think this means the mishtarik hi orche, that it's the voice that comes from the mace? The oiv brings the voice of the mace, but from the ground. Not that the voice of the mace comes from the joints of the person on the body of the person, the one that's doing the kishuf. Says the Gemara, loy the salik v'yasav ben aprakim umishtai. Even though it's saying that it's a low voice and it sounds like ba'ad ma'aretz, it sounds like it's still in the ground, the mace, but it means to say that the mace is brought up onto the joints of the one that's doing the kishuf, and that's how it talks with a low voice. Tashema, the Gemara brings from another place. This is by Shaul HaMelech. I actually quoted it in the Mishnah already. By Shaul, it says that he turned to a Balas Oiv to get information when it came to his last battle they had with the Pelishtim. He wasn't sure what to do, and he asked by the Urim V'Tumim, he didn't get an answer, so he went to the Balas Oiv, and Shaul HaMelech held that it was mutter for him to do because it was Pekuach Nefesh, and he asked the Balas Oiv to bring up the Neshama of Shmuel to speak and to tell him what to do. And there the pasuk describes, what did she do? V'Tomer Isha El Shaul Elohim Re'isi Oilim Min Ha'aretz, that she saw greatness coming up from the ground, referring to the neshama of Shaul that came, Shmuel that is, that she brought up in order to have him speak with the koyach of Oiv. Now it says the Oilim Min Ha'aretz, it comes up from the ground. Ma'alav the mishtoi ki urche, that he speaks as is from the ground, not placing on the joints of the Baal Oiv, or in this case the Baal Oiv, because it doesn't mention that in the pasuk. So the Gemara says no, even though it doesn't mention it clearly in the pasuk, but the Yasser ben Aprakim Mishtoi, the pasuk doesn't elaborate, doesn't say the details of how it's done, but as we described before, the Baal Asayif places it on joints, and that's how it speaks. Here the Gemara brings another brayso that has a little bit of a different description of the Baal Oiv. Taner Rabbanan, in a brayso we learned Baal Oiv. What's the Baal Oiv? Echad Amayla b'Zechurei, one that brings up the Oiv, brings up the mace onto his Zechurei, onto the Aver of the Zachar. The Echad Anishal b'Gulgailes, or he asks and he has the voice of the mace speak from the skull of the Gulgailes of the mace, which is on the ground. What's the difference between the two? When he brings it up on his Zechurei, Ein Oile Kedarkai, the mace does not come up in a normal way. Usually when you come up, the head comes up first, but over here, the feet come up first from the ground. And also, ve'ein oile b'Shabbos. This kind of oiv is not on Shabbos. Nishul b'Gulgailes, when you ask from the voice of the mace from the Gulgailes, from the skull that's on the ground, oile kedarkai ve'oile b'Shabbos. He comes up in his regular way, and also on Shabbos. Now the Gemara just clarifies this lashon. What's the Braisa using this term of oila? When it says by the Gulgailes, oila lehechi salik, what do you mean he comes up? Hakamei manach. You're saying that by Gulgailes, it doesn't come up on the body of the one that's doing the kishiv, it actually lies on the ground. So what does it mean, oila? Ela ema oina kedarkai, it speaks in its kedarkai, where it is in the ground, and va'oina b'Shabbos. And it also, this is a kishiv that works even on Shabbos as well. That's there's two efanim in the oiv, whether it's on Shabbos or not. So Pshat, it says in the name of the Orach Laner, when the Baal Kishiv brings up the mess mamish to him, to his body, so then the mess is under the impression that he's going to be judged. It's a din, that's why he's being brought up. So therefore it doesn't work on Shabbos, because he knows that on Shabbos, they're not judged. But by the other one, when he speaks to the Gulgailis, it's not being brought up to the Baal Kishiv, it just remains Kedarkai on the ground, so therefore that works even on Shabbos. Now, in connection to this, the Gemara brings Va'af Shailazu Shal Turnus Rufus Harashas Rabakiva. What we just spoke about, the difference between the two Efanim of Oiv, whether it works on Shabbos as well or not. This is also a question that Turnus Rufus Harasha asked Rabakiva about. Amaloi, he asked Rabakiva, Oma Yaymi Yamayim. What's different today from other days? He asked him regarding Shabbos. So why is Shabbos special? Omaloi, so Rabbi Kiva asks him, Turnus Rufus HaRasha was the minister that was appointed from the Roman emperor to be the minister over the Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Kiva asks him, what's different between this person and others? Why are you great more than others? Amalei, so Turnus Rufus HaRasha answers Rabbi Kiva, the Marit Savi, because my master wanted. He wanted and he appointed me to be the minister over Yidden in Eretz Yisrael. So Rabbi Kiva says to him, if so, Shabbos Nami, that's what's unique about Shabbos. The Marit Savi, the master of the world, Hashem created the world and he wanted Shabbos to be unique, to rest on Shabbos. Amalei, so Turnus Rufus HaRasha tells Rabbi Kiva, Hachika min Allah. This was my question. Mi yemedet Shabbat. How do you know that today is Shabbos? Maybe the calendar is off after thousands of years. Maybe the calendar is a day off and today is not Shabbos. Amalei, so Rabbi Kiva brought him a few different rayas. First of all, he said, Nar Sabbatyon Yechiach. The river of Sabbatyon is the proof. What's the Sabbatyon river? It's a river that every day of the week there are rocks that fly up of it, and on Shabbos it rests. Okay, this is brought in Gemara a few places here. So this is the raya from the Nar Sabbatyon. Okay, but apparently this wasn't enough of a raya. Yeah, this is the Saras Hashvat, and they say, I'm not sure exactly all the sources for this, but here the Gemara speaks about this Nar Sabbatyon. But so the Turnus Rufus HaRasha wasn't able to go and see this Nar Sambatyon. So then he says to him, I'll prove to you from some another place. Bal Oiv Yechiach. The way the Kishiv of Oiv is done, you can see the difference. That there's the Kishiv of Oiv that we mentioned before, that it works every day of the week, but it doesn't work on Shabbos. So the fact that you try it, you'll see that on Shabbos it won't work, and that will prove to you that it's Shabbos. And then he brought them a third proof, Kivrei Shel Aviv Yechiach. The burial spot of your father will be the proof that today is Shabbos, that Shabbos is Shabbos. Why? She'ein my lashon b'Shabbos, because even the greatest Rishayim and even the Goyim, on Shabbos there's no ashon, there's no punishment on Shabbos, and therefore every day of the week there was smoke that came out of his cave, but not on Shabbos. Amaloi, Turnus Rufus HaRasha said to Rabbi Kiva regarding the last answer that he said to him, Bizisai, Ba'ishasai, V'kilalasa, you degraded and you embarrassed my father by saying this. The Gemara goes back to the Oiv, Shayol Oiv. Hainu v'doyre shel ha-mesim. Isn't the oiv and doyre shel ha-mesim the same thing? So now the question is, doyre shel ha-mesim. So why does it say doyre shel ha-mesim in the Torah separately? So the Gemara answers, no, it's not the same thing. Doyre shel ha-mesim kedetanya. Doyre shel ha-mesim is like what it says in the Braisa. It says v'doyre shel ha-mesim. What does it mean? It's a person that starves himself, and then v'hoilach v'lam bebeis hakvaris. He goes and he sleeps in the beis hakvaris. And in order to get the koiches of Tumah to come and help him when he's starving, Kadesh Tishral of Ruach Tumah. He has a Ruach of Tumah that comes upon him, and then they talk to him, and then he can get the koyach from the mason. When Rabbi Kiva came to this pasuk, he would cry and say, one that starves himself, in order to then have the Ruach of Tumah to come upon him. There's a power that the Ruach Tumah will come to him and will be able to use this koyach. One that is going to fast with a holy intention for the Eibishter's sake, in order that the spirit of holiness should come upon him. Most definitely the Ruach of Tara of the Eibishter will come upon him. What should we do that our Vedas have caused that even when one fasts, that the Ruach of Tara does not come upon us? Shenema, as the Pasuk says, that the Vedas separate between you and the Eibishter, and even if you fast, it's not going to give you this power. There's the story, there's this word that they say about one of the Chassidish Rebbes, that there was someone that heard that there's a skula that if you don't talk for 40 days and 40 nights, then Eliyahu Navi will reveal himself to you. And he did it, and it didn't happen. So he came to his Rebbe and he said, what happened? So he says to him, come to me to the barn. Took him out to the barn, and he says, that's der fair. He also didn't talk for 40 days and 40 nights. So you hear it's a makir of the story here in the Gemara, that even if you fast, but if there's avayne seichem avdilim, it's not going to help. So the Gemara says in connection to this, Omar Rava said, Iboy tzadike, bara alma. If tzadikim want, they could create a world. Shenemar, because the pasuk here says, Ki avayne seichem moyim avdilim v'goyim. That the only reason that tzaddik doesn't have the koyach like the Eibishter himself is because avayne seichem separates between us and the Eibishter. But a tzaddik that's completely one with the Eibishter could have the same power like the Eibishter to create the world. Now the Gemara brings an actual story about this. Rava, it's the Gersa we have here in the Gemara, or it's Rabbe, Bara Gavra. He created a human being. Like we know the stories that there is about the Maram in Prague that created the Golem. Or there's other versions to the story of exactly. It says that Rabbeinu Tam, also there's a version that says Rabbeinu Tam created a human being. Here the Gemara brings the story. Rava created a person. Ashadr made Rab Zayde, he sent him to Rab Zayde, have a komishtoi bad day. Rab Zayde was speaking to him, and he didn't answer. So he couldn't speak. He was a Golem. Amalei min chevrayat. You must be a human being that was created from one of my colleagues. Hadalafrich, go back to earth. So here in the Gemara, you see two things. First of all, you see that even if Rabbe was able to create a human being, but not the koyach of speaking. The nefesh by the Eibush creates, says in the Targum, says nefesh chaya ruach memalala. The koyach to speak that they couldn't do. And another thing you see from here is that Rab Zayda just said hadalafrich. There's a Shaila Paiskim speak about, if you have this person, are you able to be mitzaref him to a minyan? He says, no. He was able to kill him. If he had a halacha like a human being, how did he say, hadala afrech? Muzayin, that he's not a human being, he's able to kill him, and he can't be mitzaref him to a minyan. They would sit together on Erev Shabbos, va'aski b'seifi yitzire, and they were Isaac and Seifi Yitzire. Rashi says this was also the koyach of Rabbah to create a human being through the shemus of Seifi Yitzire. And rumivru lo igla tilsa, and they created a igla tilsa. One shot igla tilsa means a calf a third of its age that has a fat meat, or a third born to its mother, meaning it had that quality. They created this egel that had this quality of meat, which was very good. And this is how it to eat for Shabbos. So they did this because they were desperate. They did it l'kavod Shabbos. The Gemara goes on now to other kinds of kishif. Tan Rabbanan, we learned in the Braisa ma'aynin. What in the pasuk when it says that leisanachshu v'leisaynenu. What's the ma'aynin? Abshemanayim is mave shiva minei zocher ala ayin. When one takes 7 different types of shichva zera, the semen from a zera, the zera, and he puts it over his eyes, from different people or from different creatures. So that ma'aynin is over here going in the eyes, putting it on the eye. This is a kind of kishif. The chachamim oimrim ze aiches esaynayim. This is someone that is doing kishif that makes you think like the magic, what we refer to today as magic, right? But this is magic with sorcery, with kishif. There's a discussion actually in Paiskim about this regarding the magic that's done today, because it's eiches esaynayim, so it's aser. But I think the Paiskim say that if it's a case where the people that are watching a magic show know that it's not, there's no kishuf involved there. They know that it's a certain chachma that you could explain how it's done. But you do it very quickly or whatever the chachma is. What do you say?
Sleight of the hand.
Sleight of the hand, whatever it is. So then it's not a problem because everybody knows that it's just. But if it's a case where there are people that think that you're doing something which is supernatural and it's that they think that it's a koyach of kishuv, then it is actually a iser. Eiches esaynayim.
Going back to they say that it's ventriloquism. The people that have to speak from the stomach.
Similar thing.
It became a whole comedy scene.
Rabbi Akiva says mine is something else. Someone that says about different times. And Vayim, he says, Hayem Yafalot says, now, today, it's a good time to go out, Lamachra, Yafal Likach, tomorrow, it's a good time to Likach, Limudei, Arve, Shviis, Chitten Yafais. Again, Lamachra Yafa, Likach. That's one thing. He says tomorrow is good to buy, or he says limude arve shvius chitten yafais, that those wheat that is usually grows on the before Shemitah or before the 7th year, that's good. Or he says ekurik kitnius mihiyais rois, if the beans were uprooted and they weren't cut regularly, then it won't be bad. He makes these different simanim, different things based on times or things that happen that have no sense to it at all. It's just based on, it's a kishuf. It's because it's based on something which makes no sense at all. Tana Rabbanan, in a brayso we learned menachish. There's another thing, another kishuf. What's the menachish? Menachish zayim pita nafla mi piv, bread fell out of my mouth, or makle nafla mi yadai, my stick fell out of my hands, or benoi kairaloi ma kairav, his son called him from behind. Oidev kairaloi, a raven made a sound to him, or tzvi of sika b'derech, a deer stopped him on the road. Nachash miminoi, a snake on his right side, shul mismailoi, or a fox on his left side. Right, so all these things, so he's saying that this is a bad sign for him. He's using all these things as signs, if it's going to be good or bad. Or similar, a person says, Al taschel bi, don't start with me. So Rashi says the Gabbai comes to collect taxes, and he say, don't start collecting taxes with me first. Al taschel bi, don't start with me. Why? Because shachrisu, it's in the morning. I don't want to start my day with paying taxes. It's a bad sign for me. Rish Chaydishu, or it's Rish Chaydish, it's the beginning of the month. I don't want to start the month with this. Matzah Shabbasu, it's Matzah Shabbos. I don't want to start the week with this. These are all things that a person is making signs for himself with things which there's no sense to it at all. That's the Isra of Leisanachshel. Tana Rabbanan, in the brayso we learned Leisanachshel Leisainenu Kagain Ela Menachshim B'chulde B'Oifis B'Dogim. Also make these kinds of signs with things that they see regarding a chulda or a bird or with fish, when he goes out in the way, how to start, how to do things. The point there is, the Paiskim say about this, there are certain things that are allowed. When a person has a siman, which has a certain hesber, a certain reason, al pi kedusha or al pi emes, why this is a better time, why this is an auspicious occasion, why it's not, that's not Leisanachshel Leisainenu. But we're talking here about someone that says things about certain times that has no sense to it. It's just over there, when it's something related to Kishuv, that's the Isra of Leisanachshel Leisainenu.